The world delights in your downfall. They whisper when you vanish, certain you are broken. But the wise know disappearance is not defeat. It is the sharpest weapon. Today, I will show you how to vanish not as prey, as a predator waiting for the perfect strike. Men believe survival means clinging to the stage, shouting louder, proving themselves without pause. Fools. True power is born in silence, in shadows, in the art of retreat. The lion who withdraws is not weak. It is preparing to return with teeth sharper, hunger greater, and presence impossible to ignore. Transformation requires disappearance because no enemy can strike what they cannot see. In this lesson, I will teach you how to vanish, how to reconstruct yourself in the dark, and how to reappear when all expect you broken, so that your return will not simply be survival, but domination. Disappearance. Most men fear it. They cling desperately to the stage, to the eyes of others, terrified of being forgotten. But tell me, what is more dangerous, the blade you see before you, or the one that vanishes into the shadows? To withdraw is not to surrender. It is to deny your enemies the satisfaction of striking you. It is to starve them of the target they crave. When you step away, you do not die, you transform. History is filled with men who understood this. Julius Caesar, before his rise, vanished from Rome into the east. They mocked him as irrelevant, cast aside, but he returned with alliances, soldiers, and influence that would bend the republic to his will. His disappearance was not weakness. It was design. Why do the masses misunderstand this? Because they believe survival depends on constant noise, constant proof. They measure worth by how visible they are, as if attention itself were power. But attention without leverage is a noose. You tighten it around your own neck the more you cling to it. Think of it this way: when you disappear, you create a void, and nature abhors a void. The minds of others rush to fill it with speculation. Where is he? Why is he silent? Has he fallen? Or is he preparing something greater? Your absence becomes louder than their presence. It is a psychological ambush. Consider the wolf. When the hunt fails, the beast does not linger in plain sight, bleeding energy and exposing weakness. It retreats to the dark woods. It regains strength. It waits. When it reappears, it is no longer wounded. It is ravenous. You too must learn to vanish strategically. Ask yourself, what do you gain by staying visible when your position is weak? Do you believe your enemies will show mercy because they see your wounds? Or do you know, deep down, that visibility only invites predators to strike harder? The wise retreat is not cowardice. It is mastery of perception. And perception, as you know, governs power more than reality ever will. Psychology confirms this. Studies of human memory reveal that absence sharpens presence. When a figure disappears, people's impressions of them grow exaggerated. The memory becomes myth, stripped of flaws, expanded by imagination. Silence is not emptiness, it is amplification. This is why lovers pine for those who leave them. Why rivals grow restless when you refuse to answer their challenges. Why your silence can wound deeper than your words. To disappear is to seize control of the narrative, because the less you reveal, the more others invent. And the stories they invent will serve you, if you understand how to time your return. But let us stay with disappearance for now. Imagine two generals. The first suffers defeat and remains in the field, scrambling, desperate, exposed to the gaze of both ally and foe. His weakness becomes spectacle. His men lose faith. His enemies grow bold. The second, after defeat, vanishes. He retreats beyond the hills, out of sight. Whispers grow: has he been crushed? Or is he plotting a counterstrike? His enemies hesitate, uncertain of his strength. His men cling to hope, filling the silence with fantasies of a brilliant return. Which general holds greater power? Visibility is a cage. Invisibility is freedom. You must learn to treat absence as a weapon. Withdraw when your strength is questioned. Withdraw when the world has begun to predict you. Withdraw when your enemies believe they have you cornered. Because when you vanish, you do not give them certainty. You give them doubt, and doubt corrodes more effectively than any blade. Think of your own life. Have you ever noticed how the one who suddenly withdraws gains more attention than the one who constantly clamors? The colleague who stops showing up, the rival who stops responding, the enemy who falls silent. Do they not occupy your thoughts more fiercely than those who remain endlessly present? Your disappearance unsettles the predictable rhythm of others. It forces them to pause, to guess, to wonder. And in this pause, you regain control. Never forget presence makes you a target. Absence makes you a question. And in the game of power, a question is always more dangerous than an answer. So retreat. Vanish. Let the world think it has seen the last of you. Let them grow careless in your silence. Because the man who disappears strategically is not gone. He is gathering. He is sharpening. He is becoming something his enemies cannot yet imagine. And when he returns, the ground will shake. But the return is not the concern of this moment. The return belongs to another lesson. For now, reflect carefully on this. Are you willing to disappear when it serves you? Or will you remain chained to visibility, like a beast performing for applause, until the crowd grows bored and devours you? Choose wisely, because only those who vanish with intent ever return with true power. To disappear is only the first step. The true art begins in what you do with your silence. Most men retreat and rot. They sink into bitterness, becoming smaller versions of themselves, prisoners of their own despair. They waste the opportunity of absence, blind to the truth. Solitude is not punishment. It is the furnace where transformation is forged. Have you ever noticed how gold is purified? It is thrown into fire. Its impurities are burned away until only the essence remains. The same must be done to your weaker self. Your disappearance is the fire. Your solitude is the crucible. What emerges depends on whether you endure the heat or flee from it. History is filled with men who mastered this alchemy. Consider Napoleon. Exiled to Elba, stripped of power, mocked as a fallen emperor. The world believed he was finished. But in exile he burned away his weakness, studied, listened, rebuilt his hunger. When he returned, he did not crawl back. He marched with fire, reclaiming France in 100 days that shook Europe. His absence had not broken him. It had transformed him. The lesson is clear: if you do not kill your weaker self in the shadows, your return will be nothing but a repetition of failure. Ask yourself, what version of you must die in the dark? The fearful self, the complacent self, the one addicted to recognition. Until you answer, you will remain a prisoner of the same flaws that destroyed you before. Transformation requires cruelty, not toward others, but toward yourself. You must dissect your mind with the cold precision of a surgeon, cutting out illusions, excuses, and the childish need for comfort. This is why most men never truly change. They waste solitude numbing themselves, clinging to distractions, fearing the silence that might reveal their rot. But the man who endures silence sees clearly. He studies his own patterns like a strategist studying an enemy map. He asks not, why did the world betray me? But where was my weakness, and how do I sever it? Think of a snake. To grow, it must shed its skin. If it resists, it dies trapped within its old shell. Transformation is violent. It requires the old self to be stripped away, piece by piece, no matter how it clings to you. But here is the paradox. You must destroy yourself to become stronger, yet do it in a way that appears, upon your return, as if you were always destined to be what you are now. The world must see your comeback not as chance, but as inevitability. Psychology confirms this process. Studies of identity show that people can reforge themselves entirely through isolation and controlled narrative. Prisoners, monks, exilers, those who endure solitude either collapse or emerge unrecognizable. Why? Because absence grants space to rewrite one's script without interference from the gaze of others. You must use your disappearance the same way. Craft a new script in silence. Train your body until it becomes unrecognizable to those who mocked it. Fill your mind with knowledge, strategies, and insights that make the old version of you appear like a pale shadow. Withdraw, not to escape, but to rebuild into something terrifying to your rivals and magnetic to your allies. Do you see the danger of returning unchanged? If you vanish and come back the same, you confirm every whisper of your weakness. You show the world that silence only hollowed you. And then your enemies no longer fear you. They laugh at you. But if you vanish and come back transformed, they will not laugh. They will stare, uncertain, unsettled, unable to reconcile who you once were with what you have become. And uncertainty is power. Consider the phoenix, the ancient myth of rebirth. The bird burns itself into ashes, not by accident, but by necessity. Its old form must be destroyed, or no new form can rise. The masses treat it as myth. The wise see it as metaphor. You must burn willingly, in silence, if you are to rise in strength. So, reflect carefully. What must be burned? What illusions must die? What skin must you shed before you dare to return? Because transformation is not an accident. It is design. It is deliberate. It is violent. And only those who embrace this inner cruelty return with the ability to dominate. But transformation, though essential, is incomplete without another weapon. For even as you rebuild in shadows, the world feels your absence. Your silence is not neutral. It unsettles, it manipulates, it breeds questions in the minds of others. And that is the next lesson. Power is not always taken by force. Often, it is given to the one who knows how to haunt the minds of others. And nothing haunts like absence. When you are present, you are predictable. People see you, they measure you, they grow accustomed to your rhythms. But when you vanish, when you silence yourself, when you remove your presence from the stage, you create a vacuum. And a vacuum is not empty. It is filled by the fears, fantasies, and doubts of others. This is psychological warfare. Ask yourself, what hurts more? The insult spoken to your face, or the silence that leaves you guessing what someone truly thinks? Silence corrodes the mind more deeply than words. It breeds uncertainty, and uncertainty makes men weak. History proves this. Consider Hannibal, the Carthaginian general who once brought Rome to its knees. After devastating victories, he vanished into the Italian countryside, refusing to engage the Roman legions directly. Rome feared him not only because of his victories, but because of his silence. Where would he strike? When would he strike? His absence became a terror greater than his presence on the battlefield. So it is in politics. Leaders who withdraw strategically unsettle their rivals more than those who constantly defend themselves. The man who does not explain, who does not justify, forces others to invent their own explanations. And those inventions are always more powerful, more haunting than the truth. This is why absence is not weakness. It is a weapon. Think of relationships. The lover who never calls, who leaves you waiting, becomes an obsession in your mind. You fill the silence with longing, with anger, with fantasies of what they may be doing. Their absence dominates you more than their presence ever could. Absence is power, because the mind of man cannot tolerate uncertainty. The brain craves closure, and when closure is denied, it spirals endlessly, creating stories, fears, suspicions. By withholding yourself, you turn the minds of others into prisons of their own making. Do you see the brilliance? You need not strike directly. You need only vanish, and let the imagination of others do the work for you. Psychology confirms this. Studies of social dynamics show that people overvalue what they cannot access. Scarcity breeds desire. The less available you are, the more your presence is magnified in their perception. By retreating, You make yourself larger in their minds than you ever were in reality. Consider the enemy who attacks constantly. He becomes predictable. His moves are studied, countered, dismissed. Now consider the enemy who waits in silence, whose intentions are unknown, which inspires more fear, which keeps you awake at night. Absence is ambiguity weaponized. But beware, not all absences are equal. If you vanish with no strength behind you, your silence is ignored. If you vanish with power, your silence is feared. The difference is in what you leave behind. A shadow of strength, a memory of danger, a taste of unpredictability. Think of the lion. When it disappears into the tall grass, prey does not relax. It trembles. It knows the lion still exists, unseen, waiting. The silence of the lion is not weakness. It is terror. You must become that lion. Withdraw strategically, not as a beggar hiding from punishment, but as a predator conserving energy. Make your silence deliberate, unnerving, impossible to interpret. Force them to ask, is he finished? Or is he watching me right now? Absence destabilizes more effectively than presence. A ruler who falls silent makes his enemies paranoid. Allies whisper, rivals hesitate. The void you leave becomes a storm of speculation, and in that storm you hold the advantage. Ask yourself, have you not felt this in your own life? The colleague who suddenly withdraws from the office, the friend who no longer speaks, the rival who disappears from the field. Do they not occupy your thoughts more than those who remain constantly visible? Absence is not neutral. It shapes perception. It creates myth. It makes you larger than you are. But here lies the final truth: absence alone is not enough. Silence unsettles, but silence without timing is wasted. To vanish is strategy. To return is conquest. And the true power of absence lies not merely in unsettling others, in knowing the exact moment when silence must end, when the shadows must give way to an eruption of presence so perfectly timed that your enemies collapse under the weight of it. Disappearance is a weapon, but a weapon is useless if you do not know when to strike. Timing decides everything. The difference between a triumphant return and a humiliating collapse lies in one factor: when. Most men rush back too soon. Their pride cannot tolerate silence, their ego demands attention, and so they crawl out before the wounds are healed. And when they do, the world sees them for what they are: broken, desperate, unchanged. Tell me, would you fear a lion that leaps too early, missing its prey? Or do you fear the lion that waits, crouched in silence, until the exact moment when the victim feels safe, careless, convinced of safety? The second lion terrifies. The first embarrasses itself. History offers countless lessons. Consider Julius Caesar once more. After his enemies sought to destroy him, he did not immediately lunge back into politics. He waited. He bided his time while Rome grew restless, while his rivals quarreled, while the Senate grew complacent. Only when the city longed for order and strength did he march. His return was not seen as arrogance. It was seen as inevitability. Now contrast this with Alcibiades, the Athenian general. Banished for betrayal, he rushed back whenever the tides shifted, begging whichever faction held power to restore him. His impatience made him appear weak, unreliable, desperate for relevance. And though brilliant, he died hunted and disgraced, because he never understood that timing matters more than talent. Ask yourself this when you return: what will the world see? A man still bleeding from past defeats, or a figure so renewed, so sharpened, his reappearance feels like fate itself? The psychology of timing is merciless. People's minds move in cycles: hunger, satisfaction, boredom, forgetfulness. Strike at the wrong phase and you are ignored. Strike at the right one and you are worshipped. Absence alone creates tension, but tension cannot last forever. If you wait too long, silence rots into irrelevance. If you return too soon, you reveal your weakness. The art is in recognizing the precise moment when others least expect you, yet most need what only you can provide. This is why you must study not just yourself, but your environment. Are your enemies distracted by other conflicts? Are your rivals complacent, convinced you are finished? Are your allies restless, longing for leadership? These are signs. They tell you the soil is fertile for your reemergence. Consider how great conquerors use the seasons. Armies do not march in winter because the land offers no food, no passage. But when the snow melts, when the fields ripen, the timing transforms the same march into an unstoppable tide. Strategy is nothing without season. So it is with your life. If you return in winter, when no one waits, when no one cares, you march to your death. But if you return in spring, when the world longs for change, you become unstoppable. Impatience is the enemy of power. The masses crave instant gratification. They cannot endure the slow burn of preparation. But you are not the masses. You must learn to savor silence until the moment is perfect, because one perfectly timed move outweighs 100 desperate gestures. Think of the chess master. He does not rush his queen onto the board in the opening moves. He waits, he lures, he sacrifices pawns. And then, when the opponent believes the queen is cornered or irrelevant, he unleashes it with devastating precision. Your return must feel like that. Not forced, not clumsy, but inevitable, as though the entire world was unknowingly preparing the stage for your arrival. Ask yourself, can you resist the urge to return too soon? Can you endure being forgotten, mocked, underestimated? Can you wait in shadows, sharpening your mind until the exact moment when your reappearance destroys the confidence of those who doubted you? Because this is the essence of timing, the comeback must not simply surprise. It must devastate. Look around you. The world is full of men who returned too early and were forgotten forever. They rushed to prove themselves, and in doing so, confirmed their weakness. But the few who mastered timing, they rewrote history. When you return, you must not return as the same man. You must return as the answer to a need no one knew they had until you appeared. Your presence must feel less like choice and more like destiny. But timing is not the end. It is the stage. For what use is timing if your return does not crush doubt entirely? And that belongs to the final lesson. When you return, the world will watch you with hungry eyes. Some will hope you crawl back begging for forgiveness. Others will expect you to seek redemption, to explain yourself, to prove you are still worthy of their approval. You must give them nothing. Redemption is for the weak. It is the plea of men who wish to be embraced again by those who betrayed them. But domination leaves no doubt. It erases memory of your weakness by replacing it with a spectacle of strength so undeniable that no one dares to question it. Ask yourself, why return to be pitied when you can return to be feared? History is merciless in teaching this lesson. Consider Alexander the Great. After quelling rebellion in Greece, he did not return to his people in apology for being absent. He returned as conqueror, marching with victories that silenced any doubt of his authority. His comeback was not redemption. It was proof that resistance was futile. Or think of Richard Nixon. When scandal destroyed him, he attempted years later to reemerge, casting himself as a voice of wisdom, hoping for redemption. But the world remembered his fall, not his rise. His return was mocked, his presence tolerated but never respected. Redemption chained him to the memory of weakness. You must understand, the human mind clings to first impressions of failure. If you attempt to erase them through apology or begging, you only confirm them. But if you return with undeniable superiority, the memory of weakness is crushed beneath the weight of your new image. The psychology is simple. People believe not in words, but in displays of power. A man who apologizes may gain sympathy. A man who dominates regains authority. Which would you rather hold? Do not come back to explain. Do not come back to ask. Come back to impose. Picture a ruler exiled from his throne. When he returns, does he step softly into the palace and whisper for acceptance? Or does he march with banners, soldiers, and fire, seizing the throne so violently that none dare oppose him? The first is redemption, the second is domination, and only the second ensures survival. This principle extends beyond kings and empires. Think of your own life, the colleague who disappears after failure and returns timidly, apologizing, explaining, is never taken seriously again. He is tolerated, but never feared. His weakness remains written on him like a scar. But the one who disappears, rebuilds, and then re-emerges with undeniable skill, commanding presence, and results that cannot be ignored. He dominates the room. The memory of failure vanishes, replaced by awe. Your return must be such that people forget you were ever gone. They must look at you and feel as though your absence was merely preparation for this inevitable rise. But domination is not only strength, it is theater. The world is ruled not by truth, but by spectacle. Caesar did not simply return. He crossed the Rubicon with legions at his back, an act of defiance so dramatic that it rewrote his image forever. Napoleon did not simply escape Elba. He returned to France and marched unopposed to Paris, each city along the way abandoning his enemies to embrace him. His return was not quiet. It was theater designed to war. Ask yourself, how will you stage your return? What symbol, what act, what display will make it unforgettable? Because domination requires more than power. It requires the ability to seize imagination. If men only respect you, their loyalty is fragile. But if they fear and admire you, they will never forget you again. Understand this: redemption ties you to the past. Domination severs it. The world no longer speaks of your downfall because it is irrelevant next to the force of your return. But beware. If you misjudge, if you attempt domination without true preparation, you will be exposed. And exposure after failure is fatal. A failed comeback destroys the possibility of a second. So you must ask yourself when you return, will you arrive with the presence of a lion, impossible to deny? Or will you stumble back as a beggar, clutching at mercy? Your choice decides everything. Return not to apologize. Return to rule. Return not for redemption. Return for domination. For the man who comes back seeking pity will always remain beneath those who once mocked him. But the man who returns with power silences his enemies forever. And yet, domination is not the end. For even power gained in your comeback must be maintained, secured, and protected against betrayal. That, however, is another lesson. Control is never seized by force alone. It is taken in silence, in absence, in the shadows where men's minds unravel themselves. The masses believe power is loud, visible, unquestionable. They are wrong. True power is unseen, an invisible hand guiding their choices, convincing them that what serves you was their idea all along. To dominate without them knowing is the highest art. When you disappear, you create doubt. When you return, you create awe. And in between, you shape perception, weaving influence like a spider spins its web, delicate, invisible, yet inescapable. Ask yourself, are you ready to become the predator who is never named, but always feared? Or will you remain like the herd, loud in noise, powerless in action? If this lesson has struck something in you, share your thoughts in the comments. Subscribe for more strategies. Cold, precise, and unflinching. And share this video so others may see how power truly works. Because control belongs not to the seen, but to the unseen.